roll. Rachel Gregory confirms she's going to be at our party.
Confirmation.
Done. All right, let's get into it.
Done. All right.
First one. There you go.
Okay, question. Is there a point to taking BCAAs during a workout if you only train 1 to 1.5 hours, or should I slam with my... Well, I think if you take it with your pre-workout, Aaron, that you won't need to take it during the workout itself, but if you didn't take it pre-workout, then taking it during the workout will be just fine. Okay. What determines... This is Zach Shutters. What's up, Zach? What determines if an exercise is intense enough to count as HIIT training? For example, 30 seconds of high-intensity jump rope with 10-second rest periods versus 30 seconds sprinting and 2 to 4 minutes rest. Zach, it really comes down to procedure exertion, buddy. So basically on a scale of 0 to 10, you should be hitting, if it's really high intensity, you should be 8 to 10, right? If you can recover in 10 seconds, I suspect you're not. So that's what I'm saying. Usually it should take you at least 2 to 4 minutes to recover. Am I right on that, guys? Would you agree?
Yeah.
So there you go. Okay, Dave Grego, what's up, my man? Did you say HIIT cycling post-leg workout will promote muscle hypertrophy or hinder? Well, I'll tell you what, Greg, Dave, the only study that we did on that in our laboratory, we did it by itself, and it did promote hypertrophy. So I think that as a burnout, it's probably not going to interfere with hypertrophy, but you got to keep that lower volume if you're doing it on a leg day. Okay, James Hudson says, for fat loss, is HIIT best in the AM or on an empty stomach?
No, best in the AM on an empty stomach.
Oh, on an empty stomach. You know what, James? No one's looked at the combination of the two. But I think the advantage of it is getting your day started. You get pumped up. You get elevated. The one advantage of doing it in the PM is that's when our activity seems to go down, right? So you're typically very active during the day, but if you did it at night, it would bump your activity up, which could be good for insulin sensitivity later in the night, because there is research that suggests that insulin sensitivity wanes during the day. You will elevate it at night. So there's benefits to both. Trey Harlan says, do you build a tolerance to HMB? No. Gantos, opinion on nootropics. I think nootropics are the way of the future. Andy thinks they're the way of the future. We've been getting a lot of feedback on this, so I think that we are going to probably around near the end of the summer, probably, because we're working on a bunch of other things on our Muscle PhD training course. But probably near the end of the summer, we're going to go ahead and probably dedicate maybe a couple, 1-2 weeks just on nootropics.
So stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Jonathan Lacey, what's up, Jonathan? What Olympic lifts and other lifts will help with your vertical explosiveness? I mean, pretty much all Olympic lifts will help with vertical explosiveness. So I would do them all. Yeah. Angela? Angela Silverfox says, great insulin article on the website. Angela, really appreciate that. We work really hard on our articles. It takes a lot of effort. We not only write the article, but there's graphic design that goes into it. So we actually really appreciate your feedback on that. Also want to say another thing too. We are going to be launching a newsletter. A lot of you guys have signed up for our newsletter on Muscle PhD. We're going to have Muscle PhD insiders. A lot of really things that we don't put out on social will be on our list, kind of as a exclusive thing. So definitely, if you haven't, after this Instagram and or Facebook Live, go to the musclephd.com, sign up for our newsletter. It's going to be pure information and a lot of contests too. Okay, Antonio MCMXC1 says, Doc, I just saw your last upload about intent. Can you elaborate more, please? Thank you. Absolutely, Antonio. So basically, think about this for a second. There's something called the mind-muscle connection, right? So we know this. People have been talking about, like Arnold Schwarzenegger talked about the mind-muscle connection. Like he envisioned when he was lifting with his arms that his biceps were filling with blood until they actually expanded to the whole size of the room. And that's a concept of this mind-muscle connection thing, right? So basically, intent is mind-muscle connection 2.0, and basically Ben Mikulski sort of modified it, and it's basically where you're not only focusing on the muscle, but your first movement is initiating action with that muscle. Okay, so let's think about, for example, if you're working the rhomboids, which is the center back, right? what's their job? Their job is to retract the scapula. So on a rowing movement, by rowing, sure, you're going to get scapular retraction, but you initiate the movement by retracting the scapula first and then rowing. Okay? So that is intent. It's a combination of mind-muscle connection and initiating the movement first with muscle.
I would add there, and keeping that muscle fully engaged during the movement.
Great point. Keeping the muscle fully engaged during the movement.
It's not about weight at that point.
No, guys, bodybuilding is a lot different than powerlifting. I don't care what anybody says. Oh, just get stronger, you'll get bigger. That's not true. It's not. It's false. Don't get me wrong. Gaining strength is conducive to hypertrophy, but they're not one and the same. So focus on progressive resistance training while fully engaging the muscle, you'll fully maximize hypertrophy. That's the difference. Beast Mode 93 says, Beast Mode 93. Why 93? When you come up next time, fill us in on that. So Beast Mode 93, maybe that's when Beast Wars came out.
That's when he was born.
How old? I was gonna say how old is he when he was born?
Okay, all right. Way overthinking it. Okay, but
This
anyway.
dude's sitting there going, just when I was born.
Okay, cool. All right, we'll confirm that with this Beast Mode 93. Was that because of Beast Wars? Or, which was like the sequel to Transformers?
Going off.
Or it was, Will, if Will's watching this, he'll know what I'm talking about. But anyway, how often to deload? So Beast Mode 93. Basically, there's a concept known as step loading. And step loading goes like, you start off with your volume like this. Say it's like moderate. Say you're doing 12 sets with 80% 1RM. Then you go up to 16 sets. Then week 3, you go up to 20 sets. The deload would be week 4. Okay? So basically, if you go 1, 2, 3, down. 1, 2, 3, down. That's a common way to step load, and there's certainly other ways, but that's a good thing.
Why should someone deload?
Well, here's the thing. From a perspective of continually gaining strength, deloading is not necessarily optimal. But the problem is that your joints can't take it. That's why you should deload. So, I don't know how Paul feels. I don't know how your joints are, Paul. How are your joints?
They're doing pretty good because I do deload.
Okay, so there you go. Me, on the other hand, basically when I was squatting a lot of weight and stuff like that, I got a small frame, so I was 170, squatting around 500, and to be quite honest with you, my joints I could barely sit down, and I tore my quad. I probably should have deloaded. So that's why I would say you should do it. Andy went through a study of ours, basically a study protocol of ours, how many years ago? 4?
That was 3 years ago.
3 years ago?
Yeah.
Still has problems moving around. Should have had a deload. I mean, that's the type of studies that we do. We push people to their limits, and we find out about this stuff, right? So anyway, Thomas Christopher Lewis. I love this guy. Thomas basically defines muscle PhD community, I feel. Thomas, thoughts on Yohimbine? I think it's really good. Basically, guys, I don't know who's heard of Yohimbine. Anyone? Fist bump. So all right, Paul's heard of it.
Andy's heard of it.
Andy's heard of it.
You couldn't see his hand.
Oh, so basically what ends up happening, guys, is this. When we or when we train in general, what happens when you train? What gets you pumped up, right? It's adrenaline. It's adrenaline that gets you pumped up. Adrenaline is one of the most potent fat metabolizing agents that there are. So basically what happens is that when adrenaline rises up, it binds to receptors. You can think of A and B. A and B. You can bind to A receptor or B receptor. So you have alpha, which is A, beta, which is B. If you bind to beta receptors, adrenaline causes fat loss. If you bind to alpha receptors, it stops fat loss. Okay? So typically there's more beta than alpha receptors. Now the interesting thing is that people who tend to be obese or their family's obese, they have more alpha receptors than beta receptors. So when they train, it's harder for them to lose fat. Lean people, they have a lot less alpha receptors. Yohimbine binds the alpha receptors and blocks them. And so there's some studies with soccer players showing Yohimbine cause fat loss. So theoretically it works. The only issue with Yohimbine is that when you bind to alpha receptors, eventually there are going to be more of them to counter that effect. which means that basically maybe you're using it once to twice a week, and then you need to cycle off every few weeks. So that's my thought on that. Great question. By the way, did we ever find out what Beast?
We
Beast
will.
mode? Okay, so
Answer this one, I'll find it.
okay, cool. Best way to come out of a cut: reverse diet, refeed for a few days, then slowly incorporate food. There's a lot of people out there. I'll be honest with you. Here's the thing. The thing not to do is come out of your diet and binge. Okay? So I wouldn't come out of your diet and binge. But the thing that what I would end up doing is that I would highly recommend anyway, is that you want to basically rate what's causing your metabolism to be low. It's a calorie deficit. So here's your original metabolism. You have a calorie deficit. The calorie deficit is what's causing your metabolism to adapt. Okay? Now the concept of reverse dieting is let me maintain the calorie deficit, slowly maintain it until I get back up to maintenance. The problem is that research from McLean has showed that the whole time I'm in a calorie deficit, I'm still making adaptations. So, and then once they adapt, then you see them gain fat after they've gotten back up to maintenance. Why not just get back up to maintenance right away? Right? Don't binge, but get right back up to maintenance. Now, I suspect that if you were, for example, at 3,000 calories and you diet down at 2,000, your new maintenance, if you've been dieting a while, is probably going to be 2,500. So pick a middle point, get right back up to it. Don't waste your time slow reverse dieting. That's garbage. Okay, so, I wonder, we have, people just, I don't know.
By the way, he's 23 years old.
Okay, all right.
I told you.
So
see,
you're right. It wasn't.
Right.
Does he watch Beast Wars?
You gotta ask him.
Okay.
I don't know. Do I know him personally? I don't know. I may not. Maybe I'll go friend him and ask him some questions.
Beast mode. Have you seen Beast Wars? Just let us know. So Andre,
Jalevsky?
Yeah, Jalevsky official. Oh, cool. No, I know. No, this guy's legit. So Andre Levesky official. This is he's official on Instagram. Check him out. Wouldn't intermittent fasting mess with your heightened protein synthesis phase by you not eating for a part of the phase? Okay, so that's a really good question. When you look at a cell, typically speaking, you have down periods and up periods, right? So if you fast, you'll typically supercompensate when you eat. Does it make sense? So basically, likely the deficits you get during fasting will be overcome by a supercompensation or a heightened effect of protein synthesis when you go back, because intermittent fasting enhances insulin sensitivity and sensitivity to things like protein. So if you're doing an 8 to 10 hour window, you probably won't see negative effects. But remember, meal frequency can be a benefit, but you're going to adapt to that. So my thought is if you're trying to gain muscle, periodize your meal frequency. Do periods of intermittent fasting, cycle with periods with higher meal frequency. Nick Kosick says, thoughts on study by Mitchell et al. Showing that muscle damage in short-term 1 to 2 weeks muscle protein synthesis isn't associated with muscle growth. I'm trying to remember the Mitchell study. There's a lot of different stuff. So basically, okay. My understanding is basically my thoughts on a study by Mitchell showing muscle damage in short-term 1 to 2 weeks muscle protein is associated with muscle growth. Number one, for years, scientists, there's different tiers of journals. One of the top journals, Journal of Applied Physiology, takes a lot to get published in, all right? So my brother, Dr. Gabriel Wilson, and I used to go back and forth. He got published in there before I did. But in 2015, I got published in Journal of Applied Physiology, and I was pumped about it. That was a bucket list goal. But anyway, for years, and what I do, I publish something on protein synthesis. Whatever. The thing is, for years, scientists have been publishing on protein synthesis, short-term protein synthesis. Recently, we basically found that these short-term measures of protein synthesis are not good measures at all anyway, right? So a lot of these measures don't relate to long-term hypertrophy because the measure sucks. So all these scientists have been getting published in Journal of Applied Physiology, I'm a badass because I'm doing protein synthesis. A lot of those measures are not that good anyway. So that's number one, okay? So the other thing is, let's assume that it was a good measure. when you first start resistance training, and that study was in untrained people, when you first start resistance training, basically protein synthesis is all over the place. So some of it might be mitochondria, some of it might be in the contractile part of your muscle that makes it large. So if it's all over the place, it's going to be hard to correlate that to long-term muscle growth, because as you're resistance training, it becomes more and more specific to the muscle part that makes you grow and be stronger. So I'm not surprised that even if the measure was valid, and I don't know that it is, even if it was valid, it's still global at first, and then it gets more specific later. If that makes sense, Nick. The problem with that study, really good study, but it was looking at creatine kinase, which is a not so great measure of muscle damage, right? It also looked at a marker underneath a microscope that wasn't that good. It's not a good marker. And so basically, the question is, were they really looking at muscle damage? I don't think so. Therefore, we can make no conclusion. I do think muscle damage is related to muscle growth. Okay, Sandrol Mosk Martins says, what do you think about BFR and fat loss? Well, I think anytime that you're basically increasing energy demand and repair demands, that it can be beneficial for fat loss. But if you're doing very high reps, BFR kind of mimics like a high intensity resistance training protocol. So basically, like for example, sometimes like last week I did, sometimes I've done like, I put 135 on my back, wrap my legs, and literally rest pause with a bar on my back the whole time until I've hit 100 reps on squats. When you walk out of the bar from there, you're breathing like a mother. And I'm telling you right now, that's like a hit. It's like a hit workout. It's like, would you guys agree? Sometimes when you do hits, it's like a hit workout. So for that, I would say that's probably going to be good for fat loss. Rebecca Hudson. You're awesome, Rebecca. She's great person in the muscle PhD community. Really appreciate you following along, Rebecca. Fist bump. Can taking BCAAs ingested throughout and during deloading periods help prevent muscle loss? Yes.
Okay then. All right, so it's that time.
I'm gonna get a lot of scientists going.
Rapid fire.
Okay, all right, rapid fire. Let's do it.
Bam.
Okay, muscle fiber composition of triceps. It's about 65% fast twitch. The rest slow.
Can we do a Muscle PhD Academy week on quads?
Yes, that's coming up in a few weeks.
Boom.
What's the next one?
Okay.
Nitrogen balance, 1 or 2 meals a day versus 6 or 7 meals. 1 to 2 is too small, so 6 to 7 would be better in that case. But 3 to 4, probably no difference. When carb cycling on a high carb day, I don't get the last part of the question.
Is it recommended?
When carb cycling on a high carb day, is it recommended to lower my protein and raise my carbs? So overall calories are the same. I would say don't lower your protein too much, but lower it slightly. Yes. Okay. Okay, this is supposed to be rapid fire, so I won't get an explanation. How much cardio is needed when shredding? Depends on you, but I would say at least 2 to 3 days a week, and I would do HIIT. Okay, next one. Okay, when counting macros and taking MCT oil, should I count my fats for the day? Yeah, if you're counting your macros, absolutely, Eric. What type of training split is best for fat reduction? I'd say I personally recommend like higher training frequency. So basically you're training at least like 6 days a week, 1 to 2 times a day. Hello, Doc. Can you give some insight about the infinite discussion, high volume versus high intensity? You should cycle them. That's the answer. Periodize both. Don't do one over the other. It's not dichotomous. In a 30-second sprint followed by 1 minute of rest, a good HIIT protocol. Yes, I'd say 1 to 4 minutes, depending on how intense you went. Thoughts on exercise-induced growth hormone? It induces growth hormone. Can you do intent with lower reps? Intent works best with lighter weight, but yeah, you can. Why do we sometimes shake during training? Because under a fatiguing situation, basically, when you're fatigued, you particularly fatigue out the slow twitch muscle fibers, and those are very good for fine motor movement. So now you're relying a lot on the higher fast twitch muscle fibers, and you have the larger gross motor units. And those are so many muscle fibers in each motor unit that's oftentimes harder to control. And so you oftentimes shake. But also it could be purely a coordination thing. You're not used to lifting at heavier loads, and so your nervous system's trying to coordinate. Doc, what do you think is better, autoregulation or flex periodization? A combination of both. So basically, I would say flexible periodization and autoregulation are two sides of the same coin. Just Joey. Like a lot of people, I live on sugar-free energy drinks such as Monster, Rockstar, etc. Would you obviously recommend coming off of them?
Andy's the person. He's the guy right here. This is the guy.
I'll let Andy answer this.
How many do you drink a day typically sometimes?
Yes. There was a point, it was about 5 months ago, where literally I was drinking 4 to 5 Monsters or...
Was it Monsters or Rockstars?
Monsters, and or 3 to 4 Rockstars.
Which are higher caffeine.
Which, if you're looking at it, that's over a gram of caffeine a day, which is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, I did that in grad school.
Yeah, and it gets to a point where caffeine becomes completely ineffective because the receptors that kind of accept the caffeine to make it work become so saturated that they don't do anything anymore.
Yeah.
So I got to a point where I was drinking so much caffeine that I would get just tired, just fatigued throughout the day.
Too. Yeah,
you need to cycle off of it.
Yeah.
You slept with a Monster and you sipped on it in the middle of the night.
No, I did the same thing when I was in grad school. I was doing my dissertation. I had probably 4 Rockstars a day, and I would go to Starbucks twice a day, and I just drink and I get tired. Cycling off is really good. There's a good we talked about her last week, Annette De La Rosa. She's doing a blog right now where she's cycling off caffeine and kind of saying, hey, this is what I'm experiencing. This is how I'm countering it. Annette De La Rosa, check out her Instagram feed. She's freaking awesome. Recommended dosage and timing of Glucomannan while cutting. If taken before bed, if taken before working out. Typically I recommend about a gram of Glucomannan while cutting, and it's not taken before bed. You take it about 30 minutes before you eat. 1 to 1.5 grams. That's going to cause you to not eat as much. Drinking only leucine around 2 to 3 grams during fasting period will help with recovery. Print Yash 19, take it with the other BCAAs. Yes, it will.
Do you have a reasoning? This will be the last question.
Yeah, so there's studies when you're fasting where basically, and I'm going to do question of the week after this too. I got a question of the week.
You're good. Go ahead.
Okay, so drinking, basically what happens is this. My brother's dissertation found that if you just take leucine alone, it activates the enzymes that break down the other branch chain amino acids, isoleucine and valine. And so what happens if you just had leucine alone, protein synthesis would go up, but it wouldn't last as long. So take them both. Take all the BCAAs. The other thing is the reason why there's studies showing that when you're in a fasting period, that that BCAAs can prevent muscle loss. So I think that's a good thing. So all right, so let's take question of the week. We've got a lot of questions about this, but basically, the question of the week is this: what do you think about haters, muscle PhD haters? I think that's a really great question. And there's an excellent quote by Gary Vee that said that in the world, basically the noise of the world becomes very quiet when you're in tune with yourself. And more importantly, when you're focused on the mission of changing people's lives. If you look at the news, mostly the news just focuses on hate, right? It doesn't focus on the nun who's helping out the orphan. So the world were a room that was full of hate and haters. Our goal with the Muscle PhD is to be a light of positivity. So our challenge to you today in the community is set the haters aside and focus on being the change you wish to see in the world. Guys, I love you. I'll see you next week. Bye.